My name is Dr. Deliwe Minyuko. I'm the Regional Program Coordinator at Sonke Gender Justice. I'm coordinating the Men Care Program.
My name is Mphokuhle Mapenalunga. I work at Sonke Gender Justice. I am a regional coordinator working for a project that we are implementing in Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Namibia on linking policy and implementation on gender equality. I also am the Men Care Global Co-Coordinator, together with colleagues from Equimundo, as well as a colleague from Sonke.
My name is Wessel van den Berg, and I am currently working at Equimundo as the Men Care Officer, coordinating Men Care around the world. And I've been working on Men Care over a decade now. At Sonke Gender Justice, I did very much the same, working on Men Care for the last 10 years.
Sonke is a non-profit organization that is active in Africa as well as active across the world.
Organization that works for human rights, looking at promoting the rights of women, the prevention of gender-based violence, issues around your HIV and AIDS. And our specific focus is the engagement of men in the work that we do, because we believe that if you want to deal with issues of gender equality, you have to include both men and women. Studies have shown that the involvement of fathers in the child's life is very important. So the main goal of Sonke then was to create that awareness amongst fathers.
We saw the benefits that come with men having more time in engaging with the children. So Sonke then did, a lot of work by engaging other stakeholders, by engaging policymakers in, motivating for more parental leave.
We started the Men Care campaign with Promundo at the time, as Equimundo was called at the time. And Men Care was basically an attempt to bring organizations working on fatherhood, men and care, and gender equality together into a movement and a campaign for particular shifts at an individual level, but also at a structural level.
We were at that time developing what we now call the white paper on families. So Sonke was one of the civil society organizations that were participating in contributing to that document. And Sonke actually brought in the element of the involvement of fathers in parenting space.
And it was really interesting that as we had worked on this document, unbeknownst to us, individual father had started to petition Parliament on parental leave. And he started a one-man WhatsApp campaign. He got the cell phone numbers of all of the members of Parliament. He SMS'd them, texted them, emailed them, phoned them. He wrote a personal petition. A citizen can write a petition to Parliament. So he formally petitioned Parliament, making the case for 10 days of parental leave. And he's an actuary, so he did a financial calculation of what it would cost to do 10 days. What it would cost the economy, and he put those numbers in that letter. We depended quite a lot on language that had been suggested elsewhere in the world. And that bill then basically made its way through Parliament. In the public submissions that we made in Parliament, we, when there was an opportunity for an oral submission, in other words, you can defend the case of the submission you've made written, we organized, and we had Sonke and the Women's Rights Organization and the Confederation of South African Trade Unions, COSATU. So all of us were presenting together, and we also had a two employees of Sonke who had benefited from paternity leave. A young black couple in South Africa saying that this is the benefits that this has offered to us as a family and to our children.
We also have this process with the structures like your AU, where when governments or countries write reports to present to the AU, civil society structures are also able to write what we call shadow reports, to say government will say this, but us on the ground, this is what we are seeing. So this is our shadow report, so that at least there's that balance. Then sometimes maybe our government will then pick up from the shadow report to say, oh, okay, maybe we missed something here. Let's engage with the structures and see how we can to remedy the situation.
Something that we used in the parliamentary submission was that we did depend on the world data, on the World Policy Center data, to compare different countries in Africa to what South Africa was doing, and basically explain to members of parliament that South Africa is lagging behind other countries in Africa, like Kenya, for example, where we are now, which had already approved 10 days. And that, I think, was an important lever for us, have a kind of a psychological impact on the members of parliament who want to maintain South Africa's status as a leader on the continent.
We have a lot of lessons from the global north. That's a fact. And I think for me, it's how we then need to take the positives that especially speak to Africa and how do we implement them, because indeed the context is different. But again, reinventing the wheel will not be okay, because there's already lessons learned from some of the experiences that the global north has done. Africa is quite diverse culturally, religion, so we also can't have a one shoe fits all. So how do we then get to balance all these ideas to have a kind of policy that would generally speak to fathers in Africa?
The advocacy then started to say, okay, men were saying, okay, yes, we want to be involved, but we are at work, we can't do that. So then we realized there's a gap. Then there's a need then to engage with government to say, if this is what we are preaching to the men, also policies must support that. So those issues and those gaps, we had to close them, closing them through engagement with policymakers to say, can you please allow our men to be involved? And then also, can you please allow them to be away from work?
But as those consultations were going on, Sonke was one of the organizations that had participated in contributing language, and we had suggested that the Department of Labor and the Department of Social Development consider parental leave for fathers.
So by the time the Department of Labor was reviewing the labor laws, it was just on the tail of the white paper on families, which captured issues and the importance of parental leave. So it flowed into each other.
And as Men Care took on momentum as a global campaign, one of the key resources that we had developed as a campaign was called the Men Care Parental Leave Platform. We then, with the women's rights organizations that we had initially consulted with, Sonke and another women's rights organization called Mosaic Women's Center in Cape Town, had then developed a position paper with help from the University of Johannesburg, the research team at the Center for Social Development. And this position paper then became a document that we could amplify.
So we compiled all that information and it was then presented to Parliament. So we did get an invite from Parliament to say, you can come and present your case. Of course, there was a back and forth because you remember that we still living in a patriarchal society, and for some parliamentarians, the risk of adopting such a policy, I mean, them as majority men would also kind of tie them to get into more care work.
Sonke's advocacy in other civil society structures that were part of the network that advocated for that, until the level then that the bill was passed. So then the government then went on to approve 10 days parental leave.
There was a bit of a concern that if we allow men more days of parental leave, what does that mean?
The gap that we have, it's a huge gap. It's an issue of policy and implementation, right? you have these nice policies, but when you go to the ground, you talk to your ordinary citizens, they don't have a clue what you're talking about when you talk about some of the policy prescripts or what the policy says about this or that.
So one of the obstacles really, or kind of a pushback, has been that are men responsible enough to really take the 10 days or the 1 month paternity leave to fully take care of the baby? And in most instances, you found that women will say, I'm having extra work because I'm also now having to nurse a bigger baby, which is this man in the house.
So it has always been a challenge that we as civil society structures are trying to deal with.
For example, we do have our men care trainings that usually last for 5 days for both communities or network organizations, where they get to actually experience the whole process of the role of a father in taking care of a child.
The whole process spreads to the community, because when we engage with fathers around these issues and we create that awareness, we then also identify ambassadors who are going to take the message to the bigger community, so that then the message spreads. So it's also coming from the community.
We've done quite a lot of awareness. We've done a lot of workshops that are men care focused, where we try and get the community to see the benefits really of men being involved in care work.
After the program, we encourage fathers to go forward and establish other groups with their friends or in their communities, because the whole idea is when Sonke moves out of that particular community, the message must still be spreading.
It's through the workshops and the trainings that we do that usually people get that aha moment to say, wow, I actually need to spend more time with my children.
I found Sonke having a lot of relations with quite a number of organizations. Like I'm saying, we are out there in the media or through our website or the work that we do. But if there's a work that we want to engage with, we normally then look around and see who else is doing that work. Then we approach them. I mean, for instance, our offices are in South Africa. And our work has grown so much that even in Morocco, when you talk about Sonke, they know about us. But we cannot be there physically. So these collaborations are important.
And building on the work at Sonke, on the Men Care Global campaign, we are now doing two things. The one is at an international level with Men Care, and the other one is continuing the work at a national level in South Africa. We have crafted a set of policies that evidence shows will move the needle on gender equality in terms of time spent on unpaid care. And those policies have been compiled into a package which we call the Men Care 50-50 commitment. And we are now at this point gaining commitments from government duty bearers and employers to commit to those policy measures. And we've had a wonderful success of having the Interparliamentary Union sign on to that commitment and include actions in a recent declaration on gender-sensitive parliaments called the Kigali Declaration. And they basically committed to improving the workplaces of parliaments, and to support, to make sure that care policies are not only signed off by female politicians, but that men also contribute towards progressive policies.
The world is big, right? And big and diverse, right? As Sonke, we cannot be everywhere. We need the collaborations.